Start off where we finished last week. So, all right, just reviewing our three elements of culture that we always want to bring to the group. So our full presence and respect for all those that have come forward from all different parts of the world and backgrounds, and then the determination to do the work that is being asked of us. So thank you again for joining. And I always like to remind ourselves, because this quality of humility is a really important one, to be able to bring, to imbibe this information and apply it. So the two things we should always try to remember is the good others have done for us, and the sometimes not so good that we've done for them. And that's always a way to keep us in the space of wanting to improve and being better. And the two things we should always try to let go of are the bad others have done for us and the good we have done for them. So we don't, so we're always in a space of wanting to do better, but not being too attached to our accomplishments as well. So we'll just go ahead, and our invocation again is always to invoke and maximize our potential as a group together. So we give thanks to all those that have come before us today, as well as our teachers. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangete Kirim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Guru Dinataranam. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sunna evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So I was born without knowledge, and my spiritual teacher has opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my sincere respects unto them. The second is, I offer my sincere respects to my spiritual teachers. Their grace turns the dumb into eloquent speakers and enables the lame to cross mountains. And finally, I offer respects to all of you, the seekers of the divine, who can fulfill the desires of everyone because they're full of compassion for all living beings. So again, thank you. Last week, I didn't realize until later in the day, but I got COVID as well. So that's where, and I was really, really tired. I'm still, the energy wise, still feel like I'm kind of coming back to full strength, but I'm doing much better. So that's where I was last week. And I heard it was a fantastic session with Avantika last week. So I'm really happy that happened in place of last week. Does anyone want to reflect on what you guys did last week or what it was like? Any comments on what it was like last week or what you guys did?
It was just a beautiful kind of guided meditation, just really helping us though to reset all aspects of our body, from a physical sense to our neurotransmitters, and kind of really guiding us on multiple different planes. I thought it was quite beautiful.
Oh, nice. So was it her just guiding, or was it another voice?
No, it was her just guiding.
Oh, that's great. Those are always really powerful ways to just reset your whole day, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. Perfect. All right. So we are getting into a really awesome part of the book that we're going to get to take a look at today. And so just as a quick review, if you remember, we're pretty much at this section right now of understanding the terrain. And so if everyone recalls, just for a quick overview, we're in the section of the book where we're talking about these three main teachings of Sankhya wisdom in the Bhagavad Gita. And if you remember, the first piece of wisdom was remembering who we are. And if everyone recalls, that's really one of the essential teachings of the entire Bhagavad Gita, is that we're much more than these external bodies, which are a very important machine, but we're in fact the spirit, the soul that's within that. That's in fact our true identity, and remembering who we are is a very important aspect of that wisdom. The second is understanding the terrain. And so it's not only just important to understand who we are, but also really important how the energies of the world operate. Because once we are more fine-tuned to observing those energies, then we in fact are able to situate ourselves in a space where we can maximize our potential, and we're not always fighting, feel like, you know, there's an uphill battle or fighting, if we can better align ourselves. So we're in the section right now where we're talking about what those three energies are. And if we remember, we defined this word guna. There's three gunas, and these three gunas we define that word guna as a rope or something that binds us, right? And if you recall that these three energies, if you think about it as like the three primary colors of the rainbow, so they're always different mixes and shades of each. And we said those three gunas are goodness, passion, and ignorance. And then the rest of this chapter goes into we looked at different elements of what are the qualities of the different energies. So just as a reminder for ourselves, remember that tamas, or ignorance, is one where there's a lot of regret, moroseness, resentment, anger, frustration. And rajas is that space where, again, at times needed, but one where we are anxious. It's highly action-based. There can be a lot of dissatisfaction. And then sattva, we mentioned, was a space of mindfulness, tranquility, and wisdom, because there's usually an element of planning as well as thought that's put into action first, right? So if we remember our analogies that we can all relate to, sattva is something that doesn't taste so good in the beginning because it's usually work and it takes energy, but it comes out tasting sweet in the end. Rajas is that mode where it tastes sweet in the beginning, but it might be not so good tasting or poisonous in the end. I always use jumping into a relationship that doesn't necessarily always work out as a perfect example of rajas. And tamas, or ignorance, is it's in fact poison in the beginning. It may seem like it's happiness, but it's an illusion, and it's poison again in the end. So again, just reviewing those three characteristics. And then if you remember, we talked about, based on the book, had a great example of communication and what that looked like, and we wanted to reflect on our communication styles. And then we went into looking at what does action look like in those three energies, right? Overall action where we are completely surrendered or letting go of the fruits or the results. That is typically action in sattva, whereas usually passion is driven by always being result oriented and result driven. And then we talked about knowledge in the three energies. Knowledge, a very easy way to think about knowledge in the three energies is that knowledge in the space of ignorance is usually always related to just our bodily comfort. So eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And in rajas, it always has to identify with the mind and the body. But sattva is the knowledge of where we're actually trying to see beyond this physical body. And it gives rise to a certain sense of oneness, but that's because we're all, in fact, the same, because we're all spirit, right? And so knowledge and goodness always gives rise to reminder and remembering that there is that oneness between all of us, because in fact, we're the same at the level of the spirit. And then we talked about what does sacrifice look like in the three energies. And we commented that sacrifice really is again, trying to perform our responsibilities and not being attached to the fruits. So I always look at parenting as a very good example of sacrifice that's in the space of goodness, because it's usually a very long-term endeavor, and you don't necessarily think about your actions every day and trying to derive some benefit or get some sort of being attached to a particular type of result in that situation. But again, responsibilities with that sense of being, with that sense of sacrificing for the purpose of doing good rather than being attached to some result. And then again, we talked about what charity looks like. Again, everything usually has in that space of goodness, everything has to do with an element of letting go, right? And so not being, not desiring results. That's really, as kind of an underlying theme for all of these different categories. But that's usually one thing that's coming out in between all of them. And so then we had a chance to talk about even different elements of our day-to-day life and what that looks like. And again, this is a great model because we can really look at a lot of different things in our given day. But there's one, question that I left last week, and this is what we're going to get into today, was that what are the end of this chapter, it really lays out the kind of a standard for us to strive for, but what are the signs and behaviors of one who has arisen above these three energies? Does anyone, for those of you that have read forward in the chapter, feel free to comment, but this is where we're going to go today with the discussion. Any comments? Okay. So what we can do then is we'll start off then by just reading the specific section. If everyone wants to just flip to, so it's page 250, and it's at the top of section 5. Section 5 in Understanding the Terrain. So that's the chapter in Understand the Terrain, and we're at section 5, page 250. If someone wants to go ahead and read, that would be great.
Sorry, Rick, what page are you at?
250. So it's in Understanding the Terrain, that section, and we're it's in fact the section 5 in that chapter.
I can start. So I had come, is that where to begin?
Yeah, I had come to Indian.
Okay. I've come to the Indian Embassy in London to renew my visa, aiming to return to Mathura, India in time for Janmashtami, the celebration of Krishna's birth. An elderly official spotted me dressed in the simple robes of my tradition. He must have become curious, for he called me into his small office. I noticed a copy of the Bhagavad Gita on his desk. After asking a few questions, the consulate official began telling a story. A young traveler was once crossing a remote forest. He hoped to reach a great city nearby in time for Diwali, the festival of lights. At the grand temple in the heart of the city, he planned to offer a lamp, some forest flowers, and 3 moonstones to Krishna, the beautiful lord of his heart. Deep in the forest, 3 robbers fell upon the unwary traveler. The first pulled out a large knife, intent on killing the traveler immediately without a second thought. The second robber, who was more calculating, stopped him. Of all crimes, murder is the most serious. If we're caught, our punishment will be death. It's better we simply take everything this man has and leave him tied to a tree. And so the 3 robbers went through the young man's traveling bag and took whatever they deemed valuable and went on their way. Later that evening, the 3rd robber returned to the crime site alone. He found the young traveler still tied to a tree. I'm truly sorry for all you've endured, the robber said, tears in his eyes. I hope you haven't suffered too much. Here, let me untie you. The robber, who knew the forest well, led the young traveler to a path out of the woods. In the distance was a beautiful city lit up by thousands of lights. There were lamps in every window and on every terrace. The robber opened the traveler's hand and returned his 3 precious moonstones. I'll leave you here, the robber said with sadness in his eyes. But no, you must come with me, the traveler exclaimed. I haven't had a chance to thank you for what you've done. Come into the city. I'll tell everyone of your kindness and you'll be rewarded. The robber remained silent. He said at last, I'm a robber. If I go into the city, I'll be recognized and caught. This beautiful city is yours, but I must remain exiled in the woods.
Thank you. Anybody else want to continue reading?
Sorry, Ricken, I got confused which page because I
We're
was
on 251.
251. Okay.
After telling his story.
Yes, after telling. Okay, so yeah, sorry, I was hearing but not. Thank you.
Do you want to read? Oh, you just put it on mute.
Yeah, you want me to read? So sorry, I was changing from the card.
Sure,
to
no,
the,
that's fine. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Paul or Stacy, anybody else, that's fine.
I could do it if you like.
Please.
After telling the story, the consulate official paused, looking at me intently. The dense forest is this world, he explained. We, the soul, are the traveler. If we're on a yoga path, we're trying to reach the great city of lights. Three robbers in the woods are Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. These three bind the soul in the dense forest of this world. Thoughtfulness and destructive, the first robber, Tamas, binds the soul to darkness and lethargy. Capable of great cruelty, he has little regard for the suffering of others. Rajas, by contrast, has a plan, and that plan centers around his personal gain. Rajas binds the soul through hankering and attachment. Sattva, the quietest of the three, feels pained to see others suffer. His function is to release the soul from Tamas and the Rajas. In other words, Sattva loosens the bonds of this world. Illuminating and peaceful, Sattva can lead the soul to the boundary of enlightenment, the beautiful city of lights. But Sattva can't go further. Even Sattva has no place in the sacred realm of the soul. Therefore, ultimately, the yogi must transcend all three gunas, including Sattva. The elderly official paused and turning to me squarely asked, why can't Sattva enter the city of lights? Because Sattva too is a guna or thief, I replied. Krishna explains in the Gita that Sattva binds us through attachment to happiness and to knowledge. Yes, Sattva, the purest of the three gunas, is a big help on the journey of the soul. But Sattva can't enter the highest level of consciousness beyond the play of form of this world. Sattva can only show us the way, the official said. The official was dressed in an immaculate pinstripe navy suit. I remembered that day that we can't judge someone by their outward appearance. A wise soul may be dressed in monk's robes or in a suit, dress, jeans, or yoga leggings. It's easy to forget that Arjuna was suited up as a warrior. So was Krishna. The three are wise souls all around us who can inspire us on our journey of yoga. Krishna, the universal teacher, sends them our way at the right time to help us. The consulate official continued, so how can we rise beyond the gunas? Krishna tells Arjuna that he can transcend Sattva, Raja, and Tamas through bhakti, sacred love, I replied. Do you know what the three precious moonstones represent? The official asked. This was the most unusual interview I'd ever had. Well, the traveler wants to offer them to Krishna, the beautiful lord of his heart. These gemstones are taken away by Rajas and Tamas, but are returned by Sattva. I think they represent our body, mind, and words. When we truly offer these with love, we transcend the three gunas. The official showed no sign of agreeing or disagreeing. Instead, he asked another question. And someone who has transcended the gunas, what are they like? I remembered that Arjuna had asked Krishna the same question. Such a person is equal in happiness and distress, fortune and misfortune, I replied. They are self-contained. They don't derive their identity from this world, so remain unmoved whether praised or blamed, honored or condemned. They don't distinguish between friends and enemies, but see all beings equally on the level of the soul. They understand that everything in this world is simply the play of the three gunas. The official broke into a big smile. He opened my passport and stamped it with a 5-year multiple entry student visa. You're on your way to Mathura to make an offering to Krishna on Janmashtami, he said. I'm not able to travel to that great city with you, but I'll help you get there. I certainly won't hold you back.
All right.
Pretty good.
Thank you for reading. Avantika, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I'm not sure if she's there in person. So yeah, this is it's a really awesome section because it describes a couple of things. This is basically ending the 14th chapter of the Gita, where it finishes talking about the gunas, or the different energies. And so we see here an important question is answered, is, what are the signs and behaviors of someone who's arisen above these three energies? And so we'll just go over a few of them. I've taken the ones from this book and also from the Gita itself, and we can talk about each of them. Not averse to illumination, hard work, or delusion when present, nor desires them when they're absent. So that was one of the first, qualities, is that there's a sense of evenness both when things are difficult, but when things aren't difficult, again, there's no desire for things when things are absent. So that was the first part. The second was detached or undisturbed, neutral by the reactions of the different energies. So when they see things, when they see things playing out, right, they in fact know that this is the energies, the natural energies of this world that are operating, and they're not disturbed by that, right? So, I mean, anything from, bad weather and the elements to, even something that's positive that's happening. Again, they recognize that this is the operating of the three energies rather than becoming overly engaged with their emotions in it. The third was equal in happiness or distress, being grounded in oneself. And so that's where having a strong sense of self-worth is really important, and trying to find one's happiness within themselves, or even just, again, not even happiness, but just being steady, right? In both those situations. The other qualities that were mentioned, so these are now, some of these are actually in the Bhagavad Gita, looks upon earth, stone, and gold equally, right? And so when they see different types of matter, they also see that with equal vision, right? So, I mean, generally people would be very attracted to gems or jewelry, and maybe not so to stone or earth. But again, that quality of seeing things on a very equal platform. These are really incredible qualities, not high when praised, not low when blamed. And so this, I think we can all, relate to the two spectrums. And then again, that quality of someone who's transcended these three energies is someone who's right in the middle. And then the next one is unaffected by honor or dishonor. So I was just thinking I guess we can just take a pause. Can anyone in their own, first of all, in their own lives, identify with a time where they've seen flashes of this either within themselves, or can anyone relate to one in particular? Or does that, I mean, we can get to talking about, did they remember seeing examples of one in their life? Stacy?
What a good summary. Amazing story. Yeah, I think this idea of being grounded in oneself, not disturbed by things going on. A big example we have today is around social media and getting likes and, things like that. And I think it's so easy to get attached to things like that, and to let it bother you,
And define your success too,
yeah,
right?
define yourself that way. And it's just, but at the same time, I had an experience this past weekend. I went to a reunion at my school, and I've been writing for probably a year and a half or something like that. And it was amazing how many people came up to me and they knew me because of that, and I didn't, a lot of people, I mean, you would never see them liking anything, right? Like I had no idea they were ever reading anything. And I had a number of people I'd mentored and things like that had come up to me, and it was just, it kind of makes you realize you're making more of a difference than you think. It's not around, what you might see physically with, any of that other, measures. And so that really struck me that way. And it made me realize as well. And I just kept writing, right? Like I didn't worry about anything else, right? I just kept writing. And I realized that there were all these people on the other end who were reading. Sometimes like, they're like, I look for your stuff every day, things like that. And, I didn't really think about it, but it was kind of nice to be in that setting, right? To remember. So that would say I'm not fully transcended, but because I did appreciate it, I guess. But it was just something I encountered this past weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to what kind of that feeling that you're describing of continuing on with your doing. People appreciate what you're doing, but you don't in fact know about it.
Right.
Right. And that I mean, definitely the encouragement is nice when we do receive it, but it doesn't become the barometer by which we can,
Exactly.
continue to, push us forward. And we're doing it for our own, really our own benefit and our own journey. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a really nice one. Does anyone else have anything to share from these examples of how they've been able to relate to any of these? Avantika? I think her hand is up. Okay, we'll come back. Avantika, are you there? Okay. Oh, you can unmic me. Sure, I will. Sepa, I've asked. There we go. I made a request to unmute yourself. She must be having some technical issues on her side. There we go. Oh, it went back to, okay, she's hopped off. So there's, anybody else wanted to share something? I have one story in particular to share.
Just a comment about,
Yeah,
what Stacy said is that, we still haven't transcended yet, right? Like it is hard because, again, of course, we all like to get out of the negativity, and that's something that's easier to do, right? But to not be attached to the good, because the good is what makes us feel good, right? And it's really hard to not be bothered or to not allow ourselves to like appreciate that more. I don't know, like, I think that can be the harder part of this, just that whole allowing, which is a word that I love to use, like allowing, the good or the bad or whatever it is just to flow. And I love those words again, like becoming neutral, undisturbed. Steadfastness is one I use too, and grounded and detached, right? Yeah, how do we live in this world and remain that way?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, we have to operate just from a completely different platform of the way we view things and how we derive satisfaction, right? Which usually comes a lot of times, from external, but then always trying to cultivate that satisfaction from within ourselves. That's the work, right? I'll share a story that I would say has shown progress in my own life, and it refers to the one unaffected by, not praised when high, not low when blamed, or unaffected by honor and dishonor. And so my story comes recently. There was two younger individuals. They're beyond kind of university age. but they wanted to pursue, and I've been mentoring them for a little while, and they wanted to pursue a relationship. And myself and another close friend who we know each other, these two people really well, we didn't think that it was necessarily going to, be the best match. And we had communicated them, but they still wanted to give it a try. So no problem. And I remember just recently things were not going so well. And so I had asked the girl, I said, do you want me to is it okay if I talk to the other, to the other person involved? And she's like, yeah, I think it might be helpful. And so she'd given me that permission. We had spoken, and then I think he just became a little bit more clear about what he wanted in the situation. And it was not to continue to move forward. And I remember her, like in the relationship, she feeling kind of a sense of that I had spoken to him in a way that didn't want to continue him to pursue the relationship, and that was never the case. But there was definitely like a strong sense, and obviously it's a really difficult situation when one person is wanting the situation, another person isn't. But for me, I had really, there was a part there that I know that I was just trying, because again, I was just looking at my intention of wanting what's best for both people and just trying to support both people. But this was definitely a situation I would have a tendency to get in a very defensive situation about this situation. But and I could visibly feel that one person was blaming me in the situation for maybe the overall outcome. But I could really genuinely feel in this situation because of the because of the intentions that I'd set within myself, and genuinely wanting to help and be of service, that when when I guess you could say the negativity or the blame came my way, I was probably as steady as I've ever been through what I would say blame. And so again, you still, for myself, like I still feel for the individuals involved. Like there's still a sense of compassion for the pain that they're going through. But this was just an example of myself where I was as kind of, I guess you could say, in a healthy way, detached from, whether this worked out or not, but just trying to be there for both individuals. So that was a very recent example for me that I've had a chance to kind of process and look at. And I'm sure there definitely could have been something that could have been done better on my part. And so that's the only part that I can really take accountability for in this situation, is when you're in the situation of trying to support or give advice, to look at that area. And it was a real tremendous learning experience for me, because I thought, maybe in this situation I could have tried to have done this, or perhaps been like this. But again, just overall, this is, for me, was an example of a time where I was I really had within myself tried to I could feel a sense of being removed from the praise or the blame. And usually it's really easy to, I think it's for me, it's easier to be humble with praise than it is to be defensive when you blamed, if that makes sense. So it's easier to receive positive, something positive than it is for me to be equal when blame comes your way. So that's a specific example that I wanted to share of when I was just reflecting on these qualities, and just when something had applied to me. Avantika, I know you wanted to share something, but maybe something was wrong with the audio. Do you want to continue?
Hey, thank you so much, Rikin. Hey, everyone. So good to connect with you. Paul, what a wonderful reading voice you have. I just loved that that narration so beautifully. So great reflection question. Thanks everyone who's shared a lot to learn from all of your experiences as always. For me, the one thing that strikes is I agree with everything everyone has said, and clearly can see certain areas of progress and also certain areas where still some work has to be done. But the thing that strikes me is, the first point in your slide, Rikin, where you said that you're not averse to interacting with the material world, right? So that's the thing, not averse to illumination, hard work, or delusion when present, nor desires them were absent. For me, there's been a lot of headway that's been done in that area, because I went from someone who was always a very empathic, creative, compassionate person. And then I let myself become wounded and, kind of spiral into a fairly dark place in my life at a certain point. And then the good thing about that, like every dark night of the soul, it initiated me into a lot of awakening and spirituality and, illumination. And that journey then took me into a very renunciatory hermit mode, is what I call it, almost for the longest time, where I didn't want to interact with the world. I just found no value in, connecting with people except as a spiritual being. So I would show up as therapist, I would show up as guide, that's all. But I wouldn't engage in any other way. And I think even when I started connecting with the Titans way back in 2019, I was just at the fag end of that phase. Between that time and now, I can see how much progress I've made in, I'm still the same person, just the environment around me has transformed tremendously. And I'm able to run, to be of the world, to be of service, to connect with different groups while retaining, the thing. And I think the journey has been from being a place, I think both sides, like love and hate are both different sides of the same coin. I feel also renunciation and excessive attachment are also both, excesses on a spectrum. But I think something about the journey of dharma, or aligning with what you are here to achieve in this lifetime, with your gifts, your responsibilities, your roles, your there's a certain stage of life where you're here to contribute and to serve, and to align with that, and not just kind of detach to a point where you don't care. So for me, a lot of progress has been made on that, where I've reconnected in a new way of being of the world, not from it, but in it, and dancing in a way that allows me to retain my spiritual truths, while in a very non-affected way, non-trigger happy way, connect with everyone. And for the most part, I would say 9 out of 10 experiences that happen with me right now are joyous. And whoever I engage with in whatever fashion, whether it's in a business collaboration, in a family situation, as a friend, or as a mastermind, as a collaboration, or as an employer, or as a service provider, they're joyous, meaningful relationships as a result of that. And I think it's just, cause and effect. Something within me has shifted, so something around me has shifted, and it's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that, Avantika. It's amazing to be able to look back and then process our own personal journeys and see the progress over time. I really appreciate that you could verbalize that and put it all together and share it with us. Thank you. It speaks to Steve Jobs saying, where you can never connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them when you look back, right? If everyone has heard that. And
Yeah.
I feel, Avantika, what you were sharing was, very much that connecting the dots, looking back, right?
Yeah, sometimes you just have to kind of, be part of forums like this to see, oh yeah, that's how the map went.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else wanted to share anything from these understandings, or of kind of what that person looks like who has? So again, there's just a few more that I'll share. So equal towards the desirable and the undesirable is another way that one who has transcended these three energies look. This is a really amazing one. Treats alike both a friend and enemy, right? And so that's really powerful, because usually our natures are always to be, to find our tribe. Maybe we're usually drawn to people that are like us. We are, clearly we want to spend time probably with friends rather than enemies. And then again, but that ability to be able to look at both people equally is, again, that person that's transcended these three energies. And then finally, one who has given up all selfish endeavors. So really a person who's come into the world to serve, to be of service to others. So these were, again, when we look at, just a measuring stick for where we can be going, these are, as what the Bhagavad Gita describes, the signs, the behaviors of one who is rising above these three energies. And if we really want to kind of take like one word to describe all three, it's really this quality of being equipoised. So this is a term that's very specifically used in the Gita. And if we look at all the different, qualities that were mentioned, they're all said in different ways and with different reference points. But this one word can kind of capture this, kind of this one term can capture everything, is really that steadiness, that, being balanced, that neutrality is really where our, where self-realization lies for all of us that are trying to tread on the path. Because if everyone noticed, really in that story, there was something really powerful that was said. If people caught, there was a section here, and it says, but sattva can't go further. Even sattva has no place in the secret realm of the soul. Therefore, ultimately, the yogi must transcend all three gunas, including sattva. It says here, the elderly official paused and turning to me squarely and asked, why can't sattva enter the city of lights? Because sattva too is a guna, or thief, I replied. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that sattva binds us through attachment to happiness and to knowledge. So I thought this was a really interesting, it's a subtle but really powerful point, is that usually most of us are looking to situate ourselves in the energy of goodness, and that's very much needed. But when we look further into the Bhagavad Gita, it actually talks about a whole nother category of goodness. It's called Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness. And that this energy of goodness has to be we have to use that as a springboard to jump to that level of pure goodness. And it's very much talked about what that includes, which we'll touch upon today. But I wanted us to remind ourselves that while goodness is really where we're all trying to situate ourselves, as best as possible, that in fact, that too also can serve to bind us, right? And again, when we say bind us, we're not referring to this body, we're referring to the soul, right? Because it says here, that even sattva has no place in the sacred realm of the soul. So we're looking beyond, again, all those descriptions that we talked about. It's of one who is really, again, living on the level of the soul, right? And that's why it's so important to always keep reminding ourselves of this, that first, teaching of remembering who we are, because it's really there that we're able to try to, move beyond these three energies. But at first, we have to just try to maximize sattva or goodness. But again, that's there to serve as a springboard, like to jump out of the three energies eventually, right? And then we're going to go into kind of what that process, also looks like of jumping through those three energies. Tiffany, did you have a comment to make?
Yeah, I was just remember when we were on retreat, we talked about this concept of spiritualism, right?
Mhm.
And this is kind of what this is reminding me of, is that people now, like, they think becoming spiritual is to do the good all the time. And there's a great little joke, I don't know if I sent it to the group, but it's like, I meditated for 2 hours a day, and I went to a silent retreat, and I didn't eat meat, and all this kind of stuff. But none of that matters, because there can be that fixation to think that that is all we're meant to do, is all this goodness, but it's transcending even that, right?
Yeah. And so that's a pretty blockbuster concept, right? Of transcending this sattva or goodness, right? And so, the first thing that I wanted to remind ourselves, going back to the book of Dharma, is, if everyone remembers when we were talking about, again, and this is just reflecting on going back to thinking, the type of people in our lives that have, that we think have transcended, it really is going back to that level 3, type of purity, is when, in the context of anger, the person has the ability to transform a negative emotion within themselves and others into a positive force, right? And so, again, we're trying to make this practical, but today's session is really about, like, setting a standard that it's okay if it seems a little bit far-reaching, but it's nice to have that barometer of what we're striving towards, based on the teachings of the Gita. And so I guess the question that I wanted to put forward to people is, have they, is there anyone in their life that they hear, these real life examples of a level 3, have you ever felt it? Again, we talked about things within ourselves where we may have experienced these qualities. Avantika shared, Stacy shared, Tiffany also shared, but then, again, do we have people in our lives, or real life examples? I mean, it doesn't maybe necessarily have to be people we know, but people we've read about, or lives we've studied, right? Robin always helps us set examples by studying the lives of great people, right? And so that's a really powerful way for us to learn about qualities, or try to explore qualities that we ourselves are still striving to develop. But again, just something to put out there, is these examples. It's good. We all need examples to emulate, to strive for, and so does anyone want to reflect and share personally any examples that they have in their life? Please.
Yeah, Rikin, I don't know if you're familiar with the former president of India, Abdul J. Kalam.
Yes.
And he was definitely somebody who was very equipoised. I love that new word. And I think he tapped into that equanimity, where the space between, doing good for the sake of doing good, or needing praise or criticism, or having any kind of ego. Yes, so I think that he was fairly authentic almost all of his life, very humble, and very, very wise. and very relatable at the same time, which is, very difficult for someone to consistently maintain, especially when they attain a lot of high office in their life. So, and at the same time, he wasn't renunciatory. He also held high offices, contributed a lot to the world of science and leadership and statesmanship. So, yeah, so he's someone that comes to mind. That's what I, just wanted to share.
Thank you. That's it's always nice to for people that have practically felt and experienced that either viewing, observing, or even being around that evolution or that evolved person. Anybody else wanted to share?
The closest example I have, Ricken, is Satchidananda Swami, who you've introduced us to.
Yeah,
who I got to hear yesterday. In terms of the only person that I can think of that I've actually met face to face and not read through a book. I mean, he's such a pure energy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. He's a really incredible, and again, it just shows that it takes a lot of time, to be able to evolve. But and so many times you can just it's something that is felt rather than, it doesn't have to be in all the words that they say, but I mean, you can see it in the words that they say. But generally, it's something that's very much felt. So yeah, I agree with you. Thanks for sharing. For anyone who doesn't know, if anyone wants to join this group Upbill that I had mentioned before, they're doing a 5-part series right now called On the Brink of Death. And basically it's featuring Satchidananda Swami, who came and taught us mantra meditation last year. And so he's basically, the way he gets us to connect with our real identity is he goes through his own near-death experiences. And so he'll share 5 different stories. It's amazing that he has that many, but he had 5 totally different stories last year when he joined us. And it's really incredible to see how he brings out the finer points of our existence and life through his experience. So for anyone that wants to join, it's going to be at noon for the next 4 Wednesdays. Yeah, thank you, Paul. I wanted to show a slide where I was actually going to show some individuals in my own what's it? I'm forgetting the name of the presentation. Oh yeah. Okay, I'll share a couple of, and for this group is not unfamiliar with some of these people in my life, but I'm going to share a few people from my own life that I feel really exemplify some of these qualities. So everyone has met Ed. He's been an incredible inspiration, someone who really shows me the direction I need to be heading in. These 2 people on the top right and top left, these are 2 people that I've learned Kung Fu from over the years. One is my original teacher, who pretty much trained me from when I was the age of 7 all the way up until I was 24 before he passed away. And then the third person is Shifu Wanjing. He's a 34th generation Shaolin monk who I have the fortune of training with here in Toronto, and someone who's lived that type of disciplined monastic life, just training and developing themselves. When they go out into the world and share what they have, it's a tremendously powerful example that, again, you feel when you're with them. And then the last individual who has really had such a huge impact on my life here on the bottom right is Radhanan Swami. And again, for anyone who's looking for an incredible journey of a book to read, I think now in this group, Paul, Stacy, and maybe Hiba have all either looked at or heard something that he's spoken of or read. But for me, again, has really his life has really imbibed and transcended these energies that we're talking about. Does anyone else have any comments from, if anyone's read The Journey Home, can anyone relate to what I've, to him or anything they've read in that book? If you can recall, and if you can, it's fine. But yeah, these are for me some practical real life examples that have totally, completely transformed the way I am and how I operate, because you get a chance to see the example, and it's inspiring enough to really reformat and rework your whole life. So before we end, I just wanted to share like one last kind of reflection point is the words from this book on sorry, I'm just here we go. Yeah, so I just wanted to share, there's a really important question of how does one rise above these three ropes. And so the rest of the book really, goes on to elaborate more about this. But Krishna is very, very, very specific in this chapter. He talks about what it is, and he talks about this practice of devotion and service. One who serves me with unfailing devotion rises above these qualities of material nature. And then he goes on to say, I am the abode of everlasting truth and ultimate happiness. So really what he's referring to, and if we talk about this whole book, Simon's referring to this process of yoga. And for those that, this is for a lot of people, this is yoga as we know it. It's this physical yoga. But in fact, what Krishna is referring to, and Simon alludes to it, is like this practice of bhakti yoga, right? And so very clearly, this practice of bhakti yoga, and he states it just in one word, this practice of sacred love. This is really this is the direction that this book is taking us. And just to very simply, bhakti yoga in this book, Bhagavad Gita, it is a practice, right? Meaning it's a practice of yoga. And the really amazing thing about this practice of yoga is that Krishna talks about it as a spiritual science. So he describes it as the Adhyatma Vidya Vidyanam, so the spiritual science of the self. And that's described in the 10th chapter, which means the nice thing about any type of science is that you have your hypothesis, you have your experiment, and you have a conclusion. So we should all be able to put something to the test and actually experience a certain type of result. And so a really simple way I like to explain bhakti yoga is that bhakti yoga starts where religion ends, right? Because I know for a lot of people haven't ascribed to any type of faith or religion, but this is actually where bhakti yoga starts, is that where all religion ends, this practice of bhakti yoga starts, this practice of sacred love, because it's in fact what, the love of the soul is actually where we want to go. We all just need a practice or a platform to get there. And so that's why Krishna specifically uses those words, this service, this element of devotion and service to him is what takes us there. So that is what I wanted to end with just for today. Does anyone have any closing comments or questions?
Thank you for leading us on the journey.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So next time we're going to start into distinguishing between divine and the ungodly as to start.